Hey guys, I'm Pat, and in this video I will be going over Tween service for you. So, what I'm going to start off by doing is I'm going to add a part to workspace real quick, and just kind of make it like this, I guess. 'Cause this is going to be your demonstration part to show you how tweening works and all. So, we're going to make sure that it's anchored as well, because tweening does not work on parts that are not anchored. It doesn't have to be used on parts, it can be used on pretty much any instance, but if you're using it on a part, in order for the part to work with like movement or something, then it has to be anchored. So, tweening, basically what it does is it allows you to smoothly change a number value or like any property of a part. So like if we want to smoothly change this thing's color to like purple or something, then it would transition it instead of us having to do like some kind of loop to manually change the numbers like every 0.01 second and have like a perfect change and try and edit it so it looks really nice and smooth. Instead, Tween service pretty much takes care of that all for us. And we can tween multiple properties at once and a lot of things like that. We can do transparency, color, you know, most of the properties, C-frame, whatever. So I'm going to start off by making a script here, and we're going to get into using Tween and how we get it. So first thing we need to do is get the Tween service. So we're going to make a variable for our Tween service, and we're going to use get service. Because get service is good practice, and it's how you're going to get the Tween service, right? So we get the Tween service, and this will allow us to use the Tween service to create new tweens and do other things as well. But what we're going to do now is we're going to make tween info. So we're going to make the information for our tween. So tween info, we use tween info.new to construct a new tween info, and then we give it an array. So, oh god, my copy and pasting worked too well. It's okay. So I pretty much had to save so that way I can go over this a little bit faster, but what this is all the default values of tween info. You don't actually have to define all of these. You can pretty much go up as far as you want, but you have to define them in order. So if you want to do something like change its easing style, then you would have to define the duration first. Of course, you're always going to want to define the duration though. So the first one is the duration. So that's pretty much how long it's going to take to create the tween. It will manually adjust like how fast the tween plays based on the duration and also the goal, but the duration plays a big part of that. And then easing style, there's a bunch of different easing styles. It's obviously an enum, so there's sine, cubic, back, quad, quart, but quad is the default one. In case you don't want to change it, you can just leave that as default. And then we also have easing direction, which basically changes how the easing style plays, because the easing style has like a certain way of playing, I believe. So the easing direction kind of controls how the style plays. It's not too important, the easing direction, but I've never really cared too much about it, but maybe it's important for you, I don't know. So, and then the next one is how many times it repeats. So we can have the tween pretty much repeat as many times as we want. If we set this to -1, I believe it would repeat infinitely, so we can have the tween play forever, instead of us having like a while loop that infinitely calls it over and over again to keep playing it. Instead, we can just have it set to -1 so we can play it as long as we want pretty much. And then the next one is whether or not it will reverse back to how it was originally after the tween finishes. So what it'll do is it'll tween to the goal, and we'll go over the goal in just a minute, but it'll tween to the goal using the duration. So for this, it would take 1 second to, for example, change the color. It'd take 1 second. But then after it's done doing that, if this was set to true, then it would tween back to its original color and it'd use the same duration. So the tween in total would take 2 seconds because it'd take 1 second to tween to the color and then 1 second to tween back to the other color, right? And then the last one is just a delay before the tween plays, which isn't necessarily too useful. I mean, it can be if you don't want to use task.wait to like kind of yield the thread and wait a bit. So it can be kind of useful. And then the next thing we gotta do is make our goal. So what a goal is it's really just a dictionary, and the key is the property name that we want to change, and then the value of that. I just blanked on the word, but the value would be then the goal value we want to change to. So for our part, right now we have it set to gray, but let's say we want to make it red, like 165.00, right? We could make a we could make an index for our color. So you look at the property name, and that's going to be the name of our key for the dictionary that we want to change. So we want to change the property color, so that's just going to be what we call it. And then we're going to set the color. This is going to be our goal, so we're going to use color3.new because color is a color 3. And then we're going to set its color to bright red pretty much, right? So now it knows which property to change based on the key, and then it knows what it's changing the property to with the value that we're giving it, right? And now the only thing that's left to do is create our tween object. So we just do that by using the tween create method, which is part of Tween's service. So we use tween and then we do create, and now we just give it our 3 arguments. So the first argument is the instance that we want to tween. So we want to tween our part in workspace, so we're going to make a reference workspace.part, which is the part that we want to tween, right? This could also be something like a GUI object or literally anything else, really. Just anything that has, you know, like number values or colors, whatever, right? And then the next part, you can see it up here, it tells us is tweeninfo. So we're going to give it our tweeninfo. Kind of confusing with the variable name. Might want to use something else, it's up to you. And then the next one is, it says property table. You can also call it the goal table or just the goal, whatever. So that will be our goal, so it knows what to tween to. And then all we have to do is just play our tween to make it work. So we're just going to call play. And I think I'm going to add task.wait in here. So it waits a second before it plays. Or actually, we can use this delay here. So we'll add a second there, so that way it waits a little bit before we, while we're still trying to run the game. So it waits till we're actually in the game to play it. And now what we'll do is we'll play it. And see that it didn't work because I don't know what I'm doing. First argument expects a number for time. Excuse me? Oh, I did this wrong. This isn't an array. This is supposed to be... These are all supposed to be arguments for the function. This isn't supposed to be an array. I did this wrong. My bad. So it's defined like this, I believe. And you don't have a comma after the last value because then it thinks that you're entering another argument. Alright, so this is how you define it. It's not an array, it's just it's just a list of arguments that you put in. But you can kind of enter it out like this, so it's a little bit easier to see instead of having it all in one line and kind of spreading across your screen into the abyss. But if we run it now, you'll see it smoothly changed to red. That was pretty satisfying, right? Looked pretty good. So now I'm going to go over the other parts of tween that we can do. So we also have methods and events for our tween object. So our tween object is this. So obviously we have the play event, which triggers the tween to play. So we can call this multiple times if we want to on the same part. But we also have something called cancel. So I'm just going to use task.wait for a second before we cancel it. And what cancel does is it pretty much stops the tween where it is, but it also resets the information of the tween. So that way, once you play the tween again, it will use the same duration. So it'll pretty much start over, but it'll still use like where it was. So I'll show an example. And actually this shouldn't be 1 because by then it's gonna be over. So we're gonna use that. So now what's it gonna do is it's gonna start playing. Oh wait, hold on. I didn't mean to run it that way. Alright, we want to run it like this. So now you'll see it'll start playing, and then it doesn't stop because I don't know what I'm doing. Why didn't that work? I thought that's how that worked. Oh, okay. I just have my delays too short pretty much. So we're gonna make this 5 instead, and we'll make this 2 seconds. So you'll see it'll start playing. Huh. It doesn't really, I guess the cancel pretty much reverts it back to how it was. But it's interesting that it doesn't even let me try doing like 9. I've honestly never really used cancel. Alright, yeah, so you see it gets almost to red, but then it stops. But then it starts over again, so it still takes it a second to get from that part way to get to the red, right? Instead of continuing where it left off in the duration, it pretty much starts the duration over again, right? And now we also have something called pause, and what pause does is kind of saves the information about where it is. So if it's like halfway done with the tween, then it'll start where it leaves off once you start playing it again. So that way it doesn't take a whole second to start over again. If you watch, it kind of like resumes it where it was instead of taking a whole second and starting back over, pretty much, if that makes sense. Right? And then there's also an event for tween. So we can do something like tween.completed. So what completed does is it kind of tells you is once the tween finishes, it will fire this event. So we can connect this to a function, but we can also use wait on this. I'll show that as an example in just a second. But we can do tween.completed, and we can print completed in here. So that way we know once the tween is completed, we can trigger like a block of code or something like that. And I didn't have output visible when I tested that, but you'll see we click run, and once it's done it says completed, so it lets us know that's done. But we can also do something like tween completed or tween.completed, and then we can use wait because we can use wait on events, right? Which will pretty much yield the script. So I'll pause the script on this line until the event is finished. And then we can do pretty much the same thing. And you'll see it works pretty much the same. Instead of you not having to, you know, make a whole connection to the event and like putting all the code inside of it. I mean, there's different use cases for wait and for connecting it to an event. Usually wait's gonna be more convenient and more useful though, in my opinion. I've never really had to use it, had to connect it to a function really, but that's just how it is. So another thing, we can also tween multiple properties. So if we want to also tween the transparency of the part, I think I spelled that right, hopefully I did. So we can also tween the color and the transparency at the same time. So now if I play it, you'll see it'll also slowly go invisible, but it won't because I did not spell transparency right at all. Alright, transparency. I always spell this shit wrong, bro. Why did I put an E there? Okay, I don't know what I'm doing. Alright, we're gonna run it, and you'll see it slowly turns invisible as well. Pretty satisfying. And then say if we did something like reduce the time of the lot, like down to 0.25, you'll see it plays much faster, kind of like that, right? So we can play around with the values, you know, do whatever we want here. We could use bounce in the style. Bounce is kind of a weird one. You see it kind of like flashes with bounce. It's kind of weird, but it has its use case, right? So that's pretty much the basic info behind how Tween works. Now pretty much what I'm going to ask you to do is make a script. I didn't make it before the video, I kind of forgot, but make a script where, here I'll show you, I'll get you started here. So we're gonna make a cylinder. We're gonna make it kind of squished like this. I'm gonna make it kind of big like this. And now what we can do is we can make this kind of look goldish and make this smooth plastic. And what this can be is like a coin. And pretty much what I want you to do is make it so you can click this coin, and once you click it, it'll have like a little animation that plays that makes it move up and kind of rotate and slowly go invisible. And then once it's finished, then you'll get a coin added to your leader stat, which will just be a coins leader stat. So that's pretty much the script. Not too complicated, just like adding a little animation to a coin once you collect it, pretty much is the idea. And you can pause the video now and make it, and I'll go ahead and start making it on my own in just a second here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make it now. So I'm gonna add a click detector into our part, and we're just gonna call this coin, honestly, just to make it a little bit better. And we'll also add a script inside of our coin called coin handler, I guess. And what we'll do is make a variable for a coin, which will be the script.parent, not the script. And what we'll do is we'll listen for the click detector to click. I know I'm like overusing click detectors. I gotta work on a better change. I mean, you could use a proximity prompt as well. They're pretty similar. But what we'll do is we'll connect it to a function, and we'll take the player in as the first parameter, because mouse click gives us the player instance that clicked it to trigger it. And then all we gotta do is, oh yeah, that's right, we gotta create our tween. So I'm gonna go back to our other script. I'm pretty much just gonna copy most of the script over here just to save the time a little bit. And when we create our tween, instead of using the workspace part, we're gonna use our coin. And we're not going to change its color. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to change its position. And we're going to do vector3.new. And what we're going to do is we're going to take its old position, position.x, and then we're going to take its position.y as well. And then its position.z. To pretty much keep its x and z, y and z all the same, so that way we don't have to kind of reset it. And then we're going to change its y position by, we'll go like 2.5 studs into the air, pretty much. And we'll also change its transparency to 1. And we'll also give it a little spin to make it kind of spin. Coin. We'll look at its orientation properties real quick to see what they are currently. You can see right now its orientation is currently 0, 0, 0. So if I can spell. So orientation is also vector 3. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of rotate it here to see how the orientation changes. So we can see its y value is the one that's being changed. So that's what we're going to be changing on our script. So we're going to do 0, and then we're going to do 35, and then 0 to make it rotate a little bit as it kind of tweens into the air. Now all we got to do is play our tween here once they click it. And usually what you're going to want to do is add a debounce in here actually as well, because if you play the tween while a tween's already being played on that instance, it'll pretty much cancel the previous tween. It'll get kind of weird. So you really want to usually add a debounce here. So what I'll do is I'll make a debounce variable. And what we'll do is if debounce, then we'll just return to prevent the script from continuing. And if debounce is false, then we'll set it back to true. So that way if the event runs after the debounce has been set to true, it'll just kind of return an end. So that way it doesn't pretty much recall the tween multiple times pretty much. Now what we're going to do is we're going to wait for our tween to complete. And once it's done, all we gotta do is get our player's leader stat. Net coins.value. And we're just gonna add 1 to it. And now the last thing to do is just add leader stats to our game. So we'll get our player service and we'll listen on the player added event. So when the player joins, it'll fire the event. Get the idea. I've used leader stats quite a few times now. And then we'll create our instance, our leader stats folder. Also, just something to keep in mind is that it's actually apparently better to set all your properties before you set the parent of your instance that you're creating. Just something to keep in mind. I believe it's more optimized to do it that way. So we'll create an int value as well, and we'll call it coins, because that's what we're looking for. And then we'll parent it to our leader stats folder. If I can remember what I'm doing. Alright. So now once we do, is we can press play. And we can see we don't have leader stats because I don't know what I'm doing. What? I forgot an equal sign. I don't know why I did that. Alright. So now that we got our equal signs, we should be able to play and see that we have coin leader stat. And now we can click our coin and see that. Oh wait. Oh, I had a delay. I literally looked away for like a second. Alright, so we're gonna make this tween lasts a little bit longer. We're gonna make it 1 second. We're gonna get rid of our delays. That way it doesn't it's not delayed and it feels like it's responsive, right? So now once we click on it, it kind of worked. Why did it look like that? Oh, it's not anchored. That's our problem. I didn't think it would work if it wasn't anchored. I thought it didn't, but apparently it does, I guess. I thought tweens only worked if it was anchored. But now you'll see it kind of works. The reason it is bouncy like that is because the easing style. We'll change it back to quad. However, that didn't look too bad, having it like a little bounce like that. But you can see you collected it, kind of went away. It's still there, so what we should probably do is destroy it after the tween's done. Alright, so now we destroy it once the tween's done. And what we can do now is add like a whole bunch of coins here for us to like click on and see them like slowly go off into the sky as we collect them. Looks pretty satisfying, right? Should probably turn off their can collide, but yeah, it works as intended, right? So that's how you would create a kind of coin system as like a cool little animation once you collect a coin. Pretty cool, I would say, I guess. That's pretty much it for this video. All I wanted to go over. Tween service, very useful service. You can use it to make GUI effects, tween buttons. You can also tween like VFX, like a fireball or like some kind of explosion. Literally anything. Tween service is used for pretty much everything as far as visuals go. So very useful to know how tween service works. So hopefully this video was helpful for you, and if it was, glad I could help. And that's it for this video.